Greece has long demanded the return of the classical sculptures which have been in the British Museum for more than 2 centuries.
The Elgin marbles were taken by Lord Elgin, a 19th century British lord who hacked them off the Parthenon. It's something that the Greeks are understandably furious about because they weren't lost, they were taken.
I think sending them back is a dangerous road to go down, but also one that is prohibited in law. It's important that we stand up and protect our culture.
The UK should move to a bona fide dialogue with Greece, and I urge them to do so.
The meeting was scheduled, but at the 11th hour, Sunak backed out.
Absolutely delighted, ladies and gentlemen, to be partnering with Debate House and for this debate to become the first affiliated event that we're doing this year for the Athens Democracy Forum that we convene with the New York Times and starts officially tomorrow, but today with this very pertinent debate. I'm also very happy to be joining forces with the Melina Mercouri Foundation and Deliberate. And for us at the foundation, at the Democracy and Culture Foundation, it's very important to be doing this because our vision, our mission is to help democracy evolve by empowering society through citizen engagement and better governance. We believe you cannot have good governance without citizen engagement, especially in the times that we live in, that the gap is growing, the divide is much bigger between citizens and our politicians. Citizens are losing a lot of trust in politicians, they're losing a lot of trust in institutions. So that divide is something that we're trying to bridge. The foundation sits on the nexus of deliberative democracy, which was born here in Athens, and parliamentary democracy, on the other hand, that was born in the United Kingdom, which is where our foundation is based. There is another nexus that is very important for us that's also pertinent for today, and it is the nexus of democracy and culture. You cannot have democracy without culture. Democracy is very much a matter of culture. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work the other way around, and we're seeing more and more examples of this happening. And talking about culture, if there is one cultural symbol for a universal symbol for democracy, it is obviously the Parthenon, a symbol that stands divided between two countries. And this is what we're here to debate. In the same way that in our foundation we're trying to bridge gaps between citizens and politicians, I'm very, very keen to hear how we can bridge this gap and maybe bring some united thinking in this issue of the Parthenon Marbles. So thank you very much and hope to see you all at the Athens Democracy Forum that's starting tomorrow. Thank you.
Καλησπέρα σας. Θα μου επιτρέψετε να αφήσω τις προσωπικές αναφορές και τις προσφωνήσεις στον Φίλιππο που έπεται. Απλά θα ήθελα να κάνω μια προσωπική αναφορά στον ίδιο τον Φίλιππο. Συνεργαζόμαστε 4 χρόνια. 2 εξ αυτών, το συγκεκριμένο debate σε αυτή την αίθουσα ήταν στόχος ζωής. Σήμερα το καταφέρνουμε και ξέρω ότι έχει καταβάλει ο ίδιος προσωπική προσπάθεια, απίστευτες εργατόρες. Οπότε θέλω εκ μέρους όλων εμάς στην ομάδα του Debate House να τον ευχαριστήσω και προσωπικά. Ευχαριστούμε, Φίλιππο. Από εκεί και πέρα, σήμερα είναι τιμή μας να βρισκόμαστε στην Παλαιά Βουλή και ο λόγος είναι διτός. Αρχικά, από ιστορικής απόψεως, είμαστε στον πρώην ναό της Δημοκρατίας και δευτερευόντως, είμαστε εδώ που το 1986 η Μελίνα Μερκούρη για πρώτη φορά από την Ελλάδα διεκδίκησε τα μάρμαρα του Παρθενώνα. Αυτό για μας αποτελεί τιμή, το ότι καταφέρουμε να διοργανώσουμε το πρώτο debate γύρω από το συγκεκριμένο θέμα. Και ποιο είναι το debate, σε ποιος κατέχει την ιστορία, σε ελεύθερη μετάφραση. Αλλά πριν να απαντήσουμε αυτό, πρέπει πρώτα να ρωτήσουμε τι είναι η ιστορία. Γιατί αλλιώς ορίζουμε την ιστορία μέσα από τα αντικείμενα, μέσα από τους θησαυρούς, σε διάφορα μουσεία, σε διάφορα μνημεία. Αλλά νομίζω ότι η ιστορία είναι αφήγηση. Είναι αφήγηση και κάθε αφήγηση έχει τόπο και έχει ρίζες. Και από εκεί πάμε στην ερώτηση το ποιος κατέχει την ιστορία. Γιατί μερικοί λένε ότι την κατέχουν αυτοί οι οποίοι την κατανοούν. Μερικοί λένε ότι την κατέχουν αυτοί οι οποίοι την εκθέτουν. Προσωπικά πιστεύω ότι την ιστορία την κατέχει ο λαός που τη δημιούργησε σε κάθε δεδομένο. Οπότε σήμερα είναι ένα debate στο οποίο θα ακούσουμε διαφορετικές πτυχές, διαφορετικά επιχειρήματα γύρω από ένα ζήτημα το οποίο εμείς θα προσπαθήσουμε να το δούμε όσο πιο αντικειμενικά γίνεται. Ο στόχος του Debate House είναι και θα είναι η ενδυνάμωση του δημοσίου διαλόγου. Και γι' αυτό το λόγο θα ήθελα να σας ευχαριστήσω που συμμετέχετε, να σας ευχαριστήσω που δίνετε δύναμη σε αυτό το εγχείρημα και να σας ευχαριστήσω που μαζί όλοι μπορούμε και δυναμώνουμε τη φλόγα του ουσιαστικού δημοσίου διαλόγου. Σας ευχαριστούμε.
Και τώρα παρακαλώ, δώστε ένα θερμό χειροκρότημα για τον ιδρυτή και πρόεδρο του Debate House, τον κύριο Φίλιππο Πετρόπουλο.
Αξιότιμη Προεδρία της Δημοκρατίας, που είστε απόψε εδώ, εκπρόσωποι της κυβέρνησης, μέλη της αντιπολίτευσης, φίλοι και φίλες, μαζευτήκαμε σήμερα εδώ πέρα γιατί βάλαμε ένα στόχο εδώ και περίπου, αν δεν κάνω λάθος, 1,5 χρόνο να κάνουμε αυτό το debate. Είναι πάρα πολύ μεγάλη τιμή για εμάς που μπορούμε στη χώρα μας να είμαστε διοργανωτές αυτού του ιστορικού αντιλόγου, αυτού του ιστορικού debate. Για ποιο λόγο? Διότι είναι η πρώτη φορά στην ιστορία της Ελλάδος που εκπρόσωποι από την αντίθετη πλευρά, από την πλευρά της Βρετανίας, έρχονται στην Ελλάδα, τους φιλοξενούμε. Είμαστε πολύ χαρούμενοι που είμαστε δημοκράτες, Έλληνες που μπορούμε και φιλοξενούμε την αντίθετη άποψη στο σπίτι μας και πρέπει να είμαστε πολύ περήφανοι γι' αυτό. Άλλωστε και οι αρχαίοι μόνο πρόγονοι είχαν βασική τους αρχή τη φιλοξενία. Άρα σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που είστε μαζί μας. Είναι πολύ μεγάλη μας τιμή. Και δευτερευόντως, διότι και από την αντίθετη πλευρά, από την άλλη πλευρά, από την πλευρά που πιστεύει ότι πρέπει να επιστρεφούν τα γλυπτά του Παρθενώνα στην χώρα μας, έχουμε εξίσου 2 εξαιρετικές επιστήμονες, εγώ θα έλεγα και Καριάτης, γιατί είναι και του κόνσεπτ, γελάνε. Θέλω να ελαφρύνω το κλίμα. Ξέρετε, εγώ στην ομάδα έχω πάντα τη δύσκολη αποστολή, είτε σε σοβαρά θέματα, γιατί έχουμε κάνει debate για την Παλαιστίνη, το Ισραήλ, έχουμε κάνει θέματα για την woke agenda. Πιάνουμε όλα τα κέρια ζητήματα, δεν φοβόμαστε να ανοίξουμε το μικρόφωνο και εγώ έχω την αποστολή λίγο να ελαφρύνω το κλίμα. Also, dear friends, I know it's very awkward for you being in Greece, being in the old parliament in Greece, discussing something that the majority are against. But don't worry, here we're friendly. Πέρα την πλάκα, κάτι ακόμα που θα ήθελα να προσθέσω και με αυτό να περάσουμε γρήγορα στο debate, γιατί όλοι γι' αυτό έχουμε έρθει, είναι ότι επειδή έχουμε και πολλούς δημοσιογράφους, καλύπτεται όλο το debate από τα μεγάλα εθνικά κανάλια και τους ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που μας δίνουν αυτό το βήμα, θα ήθελα να κάνω μία σημείωση πάρα πολύ σημαντική. Στην Ελλάδα έχουμε δύο ταχύτητες. Έχουμε την ταχύτητα όπου βανδαλίζουν το μνημείο της Μελίνας Μερκούρη. Έχουμε την ταχύτητα ενός βαθύ κράτους που βγάζει σκάνδαλα και που σύσσωμε και η κυβέρνηση και η αντιπολίτευση προσπαθεί να τα ξεπεράσει. Έχουμε, αν θέλετε, και μία έννοια γκρίνιας, είτε φταίμε και εμείς που την έχουμε αυτή την γκρίνια, είτε γενικά μας την φέρνει ένα ολόκληρο σύστημα. Και γενικά υπάρχει αυτή η ταχύτητα της Ελλάδος. Αλλά υπάρχει και μία άλλη πλευρά της Ελλάδος, η οποία είναι αυτή που σας παρουσιάζουμε σήμερα. Νέοι άνθρωποι που παράλληλα με τις δουλειές τους, παράλληλα με τον κόπο τους, κτίζουν κάτι από το μηδέν, χωρίς καμία πρωταρχική υποστήριξη, διεκδικώντας την υποστήριξη άλλων ανθρώπων για να δημιουργήσουμε μια πλατφόρμα πραγματικού διαλόγου. Δυστυχώς, ο διάλογος είναι λίγο κλισέ στην Ελλάδα. Όλοι λέμε για διάλογο και διάλογο και διάλογο. Αυτό εδώ πέρα που κάνουμε είναι διάλογος. Γιατί? Γιατί εδώ πέρα δίνεται η ουσιαστική δυνατότητα της ερώτησης και της απάντησης. Δεν είναι παράλληλοι μονόλογοι. Αν έχεις άποψη, πρέπει να έχεις και την ευθύνη να την επερασπιστείς. Συνεπώς, αν είσαι λαϊκιστής, αυτό δεν θα μπορέσει να επικρατήσει, διότι υπάρχει κριτική σκέψη διαμέσου του αντιλόγου. Και αυτό είναι κάτι το οποίο μας ξεχωρίζει, είναι κάτι που το βλέπουμε στον κόσμο που έρχεται, είναι κάτι που το βλέπουμε σε επιχειρηματίες που μας στηρίζουν και είναι κάτι που το βλέπουμε ευρύτερα στην κοινωνία όπου το έχει ανάγκη. Και πριν κλείσω, και με αυτό και δεν θέλω να σας κουράσω, επειδή μας βλέπουν και το τραβάμε βίντεο, πριν 3 μέρες έγινα επίσημα θείος και θα ήθελα να αφιερώσω αυτή την προσπάθεια στη Χρυσούλα, γιατί όταν μεγαλώσει θέλω να της αφιερώσουμε αυτή την προσπάθεια, μια προσπάθεια που προσπαθούμε να αφιερώσουμε μια καλύτερη χώρα για εκείνη και όλους αυτούς που έρχονται. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Και αφού μας συγκίνησε ο Φίλιππος, έχουμε τη μεγάλη τιμή να φιλοξενούμε σήμερα μαζί μας 4 εκλεκτούς ομιλητές. Αρχικά, υπέρ της επιστροφής των γλυπτών, η Dr. Ειρήνη Σταματούδη, καθηγήτρια και πρόεδρος του Τμήματος Νομικής στο Πανεπιστήμιο Λευκωσίας, καθώς και η Dr. Ελένη Κόρκα, αρχαιολόγος και επίτιμη Γενική Διευθύντρια Αρχαιοτήτων και Πολιτιστικής Κληρονομιάς του Υπουργείου Πολιτισμού. Ο Lord Vaizey, που ήταν προγραμματισμένο να είναι σήμερα μαζί μας, λόγω ανηλυμένων υποχρεώσεων δεν κατάφερε να είναι στο απόψινό debate, αλλά έχει αποστείλει ένα βίντεο με τα επιχειρήματά του, το οποίο θα προβληθεί στη συνέχεια. Υπέρ της διατήρησής τους στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο, ο Dr. Μάριο Τραμπούκο Ντελατορέτα, κλασικός αρχαιολόγος, και ο κύριος Dr. Dominic Selwood, ιστορικός δικηγόρος και συγγραφέας. Τους ευχαριστούμε θερμά για τη συμμετοχή τους και κηρύσουμε την έναρξη του debate.
Dr. Selwood, the floor is yours. You may begin. You have 6 minutes to open the debate. Here, here.
Καλησπέρα σας. Κύριε Πρόεδρε, αξιότιμοι συνάδελφοι συζητητές, εκλέκτες κυρίες και κύριοι του ακροτέριου. I have heard many national anthems in Britain, but I have never heard one performed as wonderfully as this evening. Thank you very much for that great honor. This wonderful, atmospheric, historic, important building was given a new lease of life when it stopped being the nation's parliament and it became a museum. And I want to begin by inviting us to think about museums. That's what I want to talk about first. Like so many things, the root of the word, of course, is Greek. The Hellenic and Hellenistic worlds treasured the past. Plato and Aristotle, in their different ways, both looked deeply into history for models, guidance, and inspiration. This museum preserves around 500 years of crucial history. Like other museums, it holds communal memory, because museums are the archives of humanity's steps, good and bad. And they have a unique power to educate, to inspire, and to make real. In the 1600s and 1700s, the Enlightenment erupted across Europe. and it encouraged a fresh sense of understanding the past and the natural world. It brought a particular interest in identifying and cataloguing everything, and this resulted in great collections, cabinets of curiosity, or as the Germans called them, Wunderkammern, chambers of wonder. And from these came museums for the public. And the Enlightenment idea animating them was a belief that through seeing, comparing, contextualizing, we learn about the world. We see, for instance, how different peoples in different times, in different places, have developed rituals around birth and death. Museums offer a unique forum in which to understand how humanity tackles the big questions in life. We learn that we might be different in our habits, but we are all on the same journey. So why am I speaking of museums in this way? Because today museums and the very idea are under attack. In the United States of America, the Smithsonian, the world's largest museum complex, has been ordered to remove artifacts and commentary that has anti-American ideology, and to ensure that it only displays things that align with American values. So now it must show one version of history, the specific Trumpian version of history. Museums are also under attack from academics, commentators, journalists and others who regularly now portray museums as being built on imperial, colonial, racist, sexist, or other foundations. So my opening point is that I believe museums are an important space in the world. They bring humanity together. They break down cultural borders. They allow us to see that we are all brothers and sisters. Only time and place separate the olive groves of Plato's Academy from the Arabic arches of medieval Cordoba University. The issues the people with those wrestled in were the same, the common questions of life and how to live it. Museums are our treasure houses of this past. And in my view, we live in an age when we are required to stand up and support them as irreplaceable repositories of the human journey. And by that, I mean we should support all museums. This one, the beautiful Acropolis Museum, and down the road, the Benaki Museum, whose website says its Islamic collection comes from, I quote, as far as India, Persia, Mesopotamia, Asia Minor, the Middle East, Arabia, Egypt, North Africa, Sicily, and Spain. And it quotes, ranks amongst the most important in the world. So this is my second opening point. Culture has no borders. Visitors to the Benaki Museum learn about the Islamic world from its collections, just as visitors to the Churchill Museum in Fulton, Missouri, enjoy 10,000 items belonging to or associated with Winston Churchill. Culture and objects, art and artifacts have no passports. London...
Now, you referred to Benaki museums and the artifacts the Benaki museums have that has from different countries. And you also referred to the Missouri, I guess, Christopher Wren Church. Can you please enlighten the people here how this church ended up in Missouri?
I think the broader point is that all museums around the world, all big museums that are not a small museum dedicated just to one thing. All museums have things from everywhere. It's in the nature of a museum. And as we'll come on to discuss, objects travel. That's in the nature of history and in the nature of a collective
Objects
past.
travel consensually.
Sorry, we're not doing the discussion. You address your question, and please, when you address your question, then you can please sit down.
Okay.
So we will follow...
I just need to clarify my question. My question is, does the Benaki Museum have artifacts from other countries which are stolen?
Okay, thank you very much. Please, you now may proceed.
I don't know anything about how the Benaki Museum gained its collection. We'll come on to discuss the topic of stolen. I think it's emotive and sometimes not necessary. One of the things I would like to achieve is that we can take the temperature of the debate down and look at some of the fundamental issues. So these objects, they have no domicile or passport. There is no legal system in the world which would recognize such passports. The 1954 Hague Convention states clearly that cultural property belongs to humanity. So my answer to tonight's question, who owns history, is in a philosophical sense, we all do. Culture is universal. In a more restrictive legal sense, it's whoever happens to hold it. The Benaki Museum owns its Islamic artifacts. There is no other kind of ownership.
Do you accept the question?
Yeah, I have to.
Okay.
Do you believe that museums should acquire objects irrespective of their origin and how these have come to their possession? Is that what you're saying? Because, for example, Greece is not against museums, as you mentioned. Greece has very many museums which we really appreciate and cherish. But is it your view that the museum should acquire an object irrespective of how this object has been obtained?
Thank you very much.
To be clear, no, that is not my view. So museums operate, some of them, over very large timescales. And something that is acquired in 1815 is very different from something that's acquired in 2015. Now we have rules. All museums in the world have rules about what they can accession and the amounts of checks they have to do to make sure that it hasn't been taken in conflict or looted or taken from cultural heritage sites. But those rules did not exist back in the early 19th century. They did not exist in 1801 to 1816. And to retro-project them is to distort history. So my very final comment in this first section is, there is no other kind of ownership apart from cultural ownership and legal ownership. There is no moral ownership. There are no ownership of objects vested in countries or people now, of objects that we're talking about from the early 19th century. Or any period, apart from the very modern period when new rules are coming into force. But if people say Britain's never lost any of its artifacts, very many. The oldest Latin Bible in the world was made in England in the 800s. It has been in Italy for over 1,000 years. Objects move. The centuries deposit things in myriad places. The world is interconnected.
Thank you very much. So now, we will begin with Dr. Korka. Here.
Thank you very much. Actually, I would like you to respond to the following question. UNESCO has an intergovernmental committee for the return of cultural goods to its countries of origin, which covers objects even before 1970. There, Greece has submitted a request for the return of the Parthenon Marbles, and this is ongoing since 1983. So, in its process, there were workshops which took place to specify what is meant behind what can be returned and what not, and what should be returned. And here in Athens, in the New Acropolis Museum, in 2008, a workshop took place with UNESCO, ICOM, ICOMOS, and all the great advisory organizations to UNESCO. Now, in that workshop, which took some days, the outcome was that when you have standing monuments of great importance, pieces, fragments, architectural members, whatever belonging to that monument should be returned. This, in the following year,
do you accept?
I complete the question? It's a question. The following year, UNESCO voted upon this, and this is a recommendation of the Intergovernmental Committee. Important buildings should have their original parts, especially, I suppose, in the case of the Parthenon, which is the symbol of Western civilization. Now, I would like to pronounce yourself upon this, because are you against what UNESCO has decided or not?
So, we can talk law all night. So, historically, let's imagine ourselves in 1950. There is no law in the world that says any country has to give anything back to any other country if it originated from that other country. That's a fact. More recently, there are political discussions, of course there are, because people have cultural interests and political interests, in trying to change that position. And UNESCO is one example of that. But to my knowledge, there is as yet no international or national law that would require Britain or Greece for the Benaki Museum to return any of its artifacts.
I am very sorry, but I am talking about the value of UNESCO. So, what is your opinion on UNESCO and the endeavors it has really taken into gathering the whole world, discussing issues which are not covered by law, but are moral issues, cultural issues, and are you against this recommendation? It is a very concrete question.
Well, I'm grateful to you for putting it so succinctly. I'm a barrister, I'm a lawyer by training. My role is to look at what laws courts are bound by and what laws countries are bound by. And whether or not I believe UNESCO is undertaking valuable work, currently there are no laws that advocate or put into place what it is you are suggesting.
You still have more time, Dr. Korka, if you wish to continue. Okay, you give your free time. So, do you have a question to Dr. Korka? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for bringing up the UNESCO point. I am quite interested in that because if I remember correctly, the UNESCO recommendation of '83 actually said that these items belonging to an item, a building that is still standing, should be given back for reincorporation on the monument, which is not what we are going to do here, are we?
What I said was that the issue of the Parthenon marbles has been there since '83. The workshop that took place here with UNESCO was in 2008, and the recommendation that I mentioned was in 2009. Are you aware of that? Good. So I clarify that that is not what I said about '83, having decided that. The issue in 2009 is that members should go back into the environment of the monument.
Thank you very much. Please. So now we're giving the floor to Dr. Trabucco. Here.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα. Είναι με συγκίνηση και μεγάλη χαρά που βρίσκομαι ανάμεσα σας σε ένα από τα πιο σημαντικά κτίρια της χώρας σας. Γι' αυτό πρέπει να ευχαριστώ τον κύριο Petropoulos και το Debate House για την πρόσκληση, που είναι για μένα μεγάλη τιμή και μεγαλύτερη ευτυχία. Τώρα, με συγχωρείτε, αλλά θα συνεχίσω στα αγγλικά. It is often said that the whole question of the return of the Parthenon marbles, or Elgin marbles, is... Please?
Sorry, we have to protect him because he hasn't said anything yet. No. Wait. Please, Dr. Trabucco.
No problem.
Also, you know, Trabucco, what it means in Greek.
I do know. And in a way, it is, in the original sense, it's a provocator. And I want to provoke thought.
Please, you may continue.
So, when we talk about the return of the Parthenon marbles or Elgin marbles, because that's the ones that you want, then we always talk about cultural justice or an historical wrong that has been done. Then I want to reflect on right and wrong. Let's make an example.
Dr. Trabucco, sorry for interrupting you again. Your microphone should be closer to your mouth because we need to hear you.
Do you hear me now? Thank you very much. So, let's reflect a little bit about cultural justice and right and wrong. Let's make an example. Does anyone here smoke? Let me be more precise. Does anyone here smoke right now? And yet, think about 20, 50, 100 years ago. Would it have been the same? Would you be ashamed to think about your great-grandfather lighting up a cigar in the last row in a debate like this? Of course not, because societal norms change, and with that, values, and with that, what we think.
Broke it, but it's okay.
Are you really comparing looting of ancient monuments with actually having a cigar or smoking?
I am, because I am making an example of how societal norms change, how the perception of what is right and wrong do change in society. And I want to make another point. You just started, in a way, the fighting, throwing away the looting word, which is used a lot. But looting is a very specific thing. Looting is something that happens during military operations, and it's something that has been declared illegal many moons after 1801. So, were there military operations in Athens in 1801 between Great Britain and the Ottoman Empire? No, they were allies. So how could one ally loot another one if there were not even a war? Let me continue. So, let's make another example. I could be talking about abortion, divorce, homosexuality. All of these things have been changed along the centuries, really. Let's now think about a father that has a few children, no job, steals some food, gets caught, goes to the court. He will get some very stern sentence. Let's think another father which has a job and has much money. Would he get the same sentence? Of course not, because circumstances matter when we look at justice. Please.
In your example, the one father did not have money, while the other one had money. But in this case, the Greeks were the ones that were in the weak position, whilst it was the noble lord with the churchman, the Reverend Hans, that in fact broke Acropolis into pieces. So this is very, very different. And I wanted to ask you, you said that morals have changed. So do you mean that in fact taking things down from the temples and destroying temples in that era, when Elgin's team took the marbles, was not a bad thing? Is that what are you saying? Yes, please, if you could reply.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Can you please?
Well,
this
is not true.
Sorry, you address your question. We're not allowed to follow-ups. Please, Dr. Trabucco.
Shall I respond to the question?
Yes.
So yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. That if we judge what happened 200 years ago with the morals of today, with the values of today, we are actually distorting history. We are doing something that we don't have any right to do, because our children, grandchildren could do the same to us, because something that we consider absolutely normal right now could be judged something morally reproachable in 200 years' time.
Are you aware of Gistarakis and of Kursunu Jamin Monastiraki? Do you know why Gistarakis, that was the voivode of Athens, was sent away by the Sultan? Do you remember? Why was he sent away?
Yes, I am aware. And
why?
The fact that actually
because
the Athenians...
he ruined Olympius Zeus'
Excuse me. We're not going to allow this, okay? You will address your question, and Dr. Trabucco will answer.
So the fact that the Athenians actually had some power to get the Sultan to remove Sister Agis, just in the same way as they had done with the previous voivode, with Ali Haji, it's the proof that actually when the Greeks and the Athenians wanted, they had some voice, and yet they didn't use this voice. We'll go back to that later. So we have the children, and they get and the two fathers, and they get two different sentences because circumstances matter when it comes to justice. You cannot have real justice without a perception about the circumstances. Let's make a third situation where there is a man that walks around the road and finds 50 euro. Then he takes them and goes away. Nobody there, right? It's nobody's money, so he takes them. Let's make a different situation. There is somebody else that is looking at them and takes the money, goes away, and goes around saying, no, there was no one, and instead it had just been slipped off the person before him. Would this be right? Of course not. Because when it comes to justice, truth matters. So, the opposing side wants you to believe that what Lord Elgin did was wrong, that it was illegal, that his motives were shallow, and yet, as Shakespeare would say, there is no truth in your report, Macbeth. There is zero historical evidence supporting this reconstruction of the events. None for the theft, none for the greed, none for the bribes, none for the home decoration idea. I wrote just this month an academic study that has been published.
I am very sorry, but I would like to ask you whether, apart from all the negative comments that Elgin got from all the dilettanti that were here at the time, not even mentioning Byron or others, but what would you have to say about Thomas Lacey, who was set free from Egypt to come to Athens and help Elgin with his demolitions of the building, when he said that, I am going off from Egypt to get away from the war scene, of course, to commit sacrilege and be an accomplice to Elgin's destructions. What is your opinion of that? And is that not reaction at the time? And were things different than in that day? Are they different today? No, they were different. They were not different then, as I suppose you may agree with statements that are written.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
In agreement with
Dr.
that?
Trabucco.
Thank you. I am in agreement with the fact that we can always find somebody who has a different opinion. Right now, I am totally aware that there is at least one person who is a Greek that actually does agree with our side of the debate. So, should we decide that the opinion of Greece is exactly the same as that one person? No, just in the same way, we cannot decide only on the testimony of Thomas Lacey. Actually, there was a vote in Parliament, for example, when they decided upon the acquisition of the marbles, and the vote ended up 90 against 32. That's quite a sizable majority for the acquisition, wouldn't you say? Yes, of course. There was somebody of the dilettante society that was following Richard Payne Knight and his condemnation of whatever Elgin did. But Richard Payne Knight wasn't exactly a connoisseur. He thought that Lord Elgin had taken Roman sculptures of the time of Hadrian, as he said. What did he know about things, really?
Thank you very much. That was the reply. Okay, we will give you 1 more minute to finish. Okay, thank you very much.
So, the whole question about the fact that you are talking about this without evidence is that you need to see Lord Elgin with some sort of monster, because this will shield you from the truth. And the truth was that there was a state of demolition, progressive decay of the Parthenon. There was a need for the sculptures to be saved. There was a permission that has been given to Elgin. Therefore, we cannot talk about this if we don't agree on the basics first. There was once a wise man, a Greek man, named Aristotle, who said, if you are forced to choose between friendship and the truth, always prefer truth. So in the spirit of friendship, let's be friends with truth and friends in truth. Thank you.
Much. And now we're giving the floor to Eirini Stamatoudi. Here, here.
In my speech today, I'll argue why the Parthenon marbles should be returned to Athens. First, the Parthenon marbles were taken without authorization. The Acropolis was the Sultan's private property, and only he could authorize any removals. This could only be done with a special firman, and a firman never existed. What existed was a letter from an Ottoman official, Kaymakam Pasha, authorizing Elgin's team to make casts and collect some stones that had fallen on the ground. A firman has specific language and bears the Sultan's signature, the Dogra. Nothing like that was present. It's like invoking a presidential decree that hasn't been signed by the president.
I think the question of the firman is fascinating because people always come back to it. You're right, we no longer have the original. We don't have the original of most historical documents. But what we do have is accounts from people like John Galt that he saw the firman, and we know that for 10 or more years, firmans were issued because, and this is my question to you, did anybody from the Ottoman authorization, who were the only government at the time, alas, but that's true, did anybody ever allege that Elgin overstretched his authority?
Zeynep Bosch, in UNESCO, a few months ago, I think it was last year, she said that there was no firman that have ever authorized Elgin to take away the marbles. And she is the person that is responsible in the Ministry of Culture of Turkey. So.
Is it a follow-up question? Yes, please.
So yes, Dr. Zeynep Boz said that she has worked very hard and looked very hard for the firman in the wrong place. So how am I surprised? Because we know that the firman was brought to Athens by Reverend Hunt and Mubashir, that is an imperial messenger. We know, as stated just now from Dr. Selwood, that the firman was in Athens in 1810, and then there was the revolution, and they started making cartridges with the paper of the Voivode archive, where this firman should have been kept, and where this firman should be looked for.
Thank you very much.
The records, the Ottoman records, were excellent. Everything that was issued by the Sultan, it was recorded. Since this was not recorded, it did not exist. That's why what existed was a letter. So Elgin was not authorized to remove or cut into the facades of the frieze, the metopes and the pediments. So not only did Elgin exceed his permission, just to finish my sentence, not only did Elgin exceed his permission, but he didn't have any permission at all.
So the removal of the sculptures took many years in broad daylight. We know from accounts hundreds of people working on it. It wasn't done at night secretly. It was done completely in the open. Can you tell me who objected? Who came along and said, Elgin, you're not allowed to do that. You don't have permission. Stop it.
The Greeks were under Ottoman occupation, and they could not be very, very express about that. However, there have been instances where the Greeks reacted. I'll give you one example only, but I can give you several if you want. Ioannis Benizelos, he wrote in the history of Athens that this was not the right thing to do and that this firman had never authorized Elgin to take away the antiquities. But apart from that, if you look at the British Parliament, the discussions they had in 1816, you'll see that many members of the British Parliament say expressly, and this is recorded, that this firman, they call it because as a generic term for letter, Elgin was never authorized to take that away. And it is not only them that tell it, but it is also Elgin himself, and I'll come to that in a minute.
There are three historical errors that I want to address, at least, if not correct.
Wait, is it a question or is it a statement?
It is let's make it into a question. Let's make it into a question.
It has to be a question and a short one because we have to respect her time as well.
Okay. So, are you using Ottoman occupation in the sense used by international law at the time? Or are you just saying that there were just an Ottoman government and that Athens was a province of the empire and it was not a colonial state or any vassal state in any way whatsoever?
I will be very, very clear on that. It was Greeks that were occupied. That's why it was Greeks that had rebelled. That's why we had the Greek Revolution from which the Greek state was created. How did Elgin remove the marbles? By bribing, lying, and abusing his post as the British ambassador in Constantinople. Elgin, in a letter to the then UK Prime Minister Spencer Perceval in 1811, writes, "My successors in the embassy could not obtain permission for the removal. The port denied that the persons who had sold those marbles to me had any right to dispose of them. He even lies to the Prime Minister himself, saying that he bought the marbles when no such transaction ever occurred."
Are you aware that at the time of this famous Adair letter, 20 out of 26 of the shipments of the marbles were already in London, and therefore this letter cannot possibly be referring to the first collection of marbles, but to the second?
Thank you very much for your question, but it was not possible that the first half was legal and the other half was not legal because they were all had been removed with the same letter that you call firman. So, I will continue with the other reasons why the marble should be returned. The temple was ultimately destroyed by Elgin's act. The temple suffered through the years, but was completely and utterly dismantled in the worst possible manner by Elgin. His team sawed off the best well-preserved sculptural facades of the architectural parts of the temple. Some of them fell on the ground as they were being cut off and broke into pieces, making the home irreparable. Even Luzieri himself, who was part of Elgin's team, admits in 1802 in one of his letters to Elgin that he had to be barbarous. Third.
Sorry, because you have many time and we have a second round, the third round, okay? I will protect the speaker right now until the last minute, so no more questions. Thank you very much.
Third, the Parthenon marbles were not acquired legally by the British government and consequently by the British Museum. When discussions were held at the British Parliament for their acquisition in 1816, the Parthenon marbles were already in bond because of Elgin's debt to the state. No official documents were submitted to them, apart from an English translation of an Italian translation of a letter that was called the firman. A select committee took testimonies from the very people who removed them and were somehow involved in this cultural atrocity. No Greeks or Turks were called in. And still, from the discussions in the parliaments, they knew that Elgin bribed and abused his post. Hammersley, a member of the parliament referred, I quote, to the dishonesty of the transaction by which the collection was obtained. He said that title to the marbles cannot be supported on the vague words of a firman which only gave authority to remove some small pieces of stone. He referred to the bribes Hunt had to pay, and that placing the marbles in the British Museum would be a dishonor for that country. These are Hammersley's words, not mine. His words were echoed by several other members of parliament, bankers, Abercrombie, Preston, Sir John Newport, and many, many others. So, despite Elgin's effort to conceal the truth, the British government of the time knew the circumstances under which the marbles were acquired and therefore was by no means in good faith. And as we all know, one cannot pass a title to someone if they do not have a title themselves. Therefore, the UK and subsequently the British Museum never acquired title in the marbles. Fourth, they should be returned because they are the most representative pieces of classical Athens, and it is a shame to be kept divided when they can be united in their original context, in their place of origin. Despite the fact that they cannot be put back on the temple from which Elgin dismantled them, by ruining it further, they can at least be reunited in their original setting, in a purpose-built museum, under the Attic light, in direct eye contact and proximity to the temple, in their natural context. It is a pity for visitors to visit Athens and not see in unity the most emblematic piece of it. You cannot maintain divided the best parts of a World Heritage Monument. Visitors receive only half of the information. This is a restitution that will not only serve the Greeks, but it will primarily serve the world.
Thank you very much. So now we will play the video of Lord Vaizey. It is 2 minutes, and we will add 1 minute for you if you want to rebuttal, okay, what he's going to say.
Hello, this is Ed Vaizey, Lord Vaizey of Didcot. I'm sorry I can't be with you, business prevents me being there. I'm beaming in from a wet London on a wet Sunday afternoon, so please forgive the informality of my attire. Anyway, I am the co-chair of the Parthenon project, which is a campaign set up some years ago to reunite the Parthenon frieze, and I am very proud to be the co-chair. As I think your president has remarked very recently, there is no more compelling case in culture today than the reunification of the Parthenon frieze. This is not a question of attribution, a question of ownership, a question of whatever. It's a question about, very simply, reuniting a unique piece of art. If any other piece of art was cut in two, the point about reuniting them would be overwhelming. So if everyone agrees that this unique piece of art should be reunited, then the next question is, where should it be displayed? And the most obvious place to display it is at its home in a purpose-built museum in Athens, overlooking the very place it was designed for. So the case is overwhelming. But the second point to make, of course, is that nobody should regard this debate as having one winner and one loser. If the Parthenon sculptures are reunited, of course the world will be a winner. But more importantly, the cultural relations between England and Greece will be the winner. The opportunity to have deep and meaningful cultural exchanges based around the Parthenon friezes, to exchange unique objects currently displayed in Athens, having never left that great city, in the British Museum as it emerges from its chrysalis, reborn following its renovation. These are the real opportunities that will flow from the reunification of the Parthenon sculptures. As a Labour MP remarked recently, it is not enough simply to say, let's reunite these sculptures. It has to be part of a bigger and wider cultural exchange and conversation. And you know, the deep love and respect that we all feel for each other, Greeks and the British, this is just part and parcel. It's very natural, it's long overdue, and let's hope it happens soon. Thank you for listening to me.
So now, Dr. Selwood, for 4 minutes. Here, here.
I want to talk about some of the specific contentious topics, so the bell is going to be ringing loudly. Elgin was not a monster. He was a man of the 18th and 19th centuries with a love of the ancient world, just like others in Greece and in Britain and elsewhere. But today he has become a Hollywood villain. But that is not an accurate picture. Before leaving, Elgin asked the British government for money to take casts and moulds of sculptures in Athens so he could establish a school in London where artists could learn from the skill of classical Greek sculptors. He was refused, and so he paid himself. Bankrupted himself, in fact, bankrupted his family for 3 generations.
If he was refused to make this school by the British government, why are you alleging on different instances that he has removed the marbles for the benefit of the public and in order for them to end up in the British Museum? Because if he doesn't even have permission for a school, what made him think that the British government are going to buy the marbles?
Money. He asked the government for money to pay for artists to take moulds and casts, and they said no. So he then decided to pay for it himself. What changed was when they saw the state of the marbles with the Ottoman damage, that the mission changed from taking casts to one of rescue. When Elgin's cast makers and artists finally around, they found, as you know, the Ottomans destroying the Parthenon sculptures, taking rifle target practice, sawing bits off for tourists, grinding it up for lime. So, well, we've addressed it. Questions around the firmans. I knew this was going to come up. Yes, there is not an original firman in existence, but there are records of many firmans. Elgin had at least 8 firmans. The last one was given in 1810, I think it was, for the last shipment to leave Piraeus, when the French consul, Choiseul-Gouffier, tried to prevent it because he wanted the marbles for the Louvre. But the strongest evidence of the firmans, apart from the written evidence, is that the Ottomans never said, "Stop it. We said you couldn't do that. We said you could only take small bits." But that's not the case.
Let me please ask your opinion on this following. Do you consider any kind of letter that was issued from the Ottomans as a firman? Definitely, Elgin was an ambassador, and he could not call something which was not a firman, because he knew the etiquette and he knew everything at being ambassador. Do you consider a simple bouillardi as a firman?
I think that's a question that doesn't really have a point, in the sense that not every document is a firman. A firman has particular words and format and formulas. The Ottomans were very precise about these things. But we do have records of the letter being obtained in Constantinople, being brought by the dragoman, being taken to the voivode's house here, and permission being given for the first metope to be taken down. So do you say that there was no letter?
Of course there was no letter which was officially given to Elgin when he took down the first metope. He himself never expected to remove originals, and he was really exhilarated when he learned 2 months later that the first metope was down, even through any possible dream he had. And he states this, that I only thought I would come back with my casts. So whatever he got was totally under the table, and there was no possible even mention of removing anything, even in the unofficial letter, which he as a friendly gesture he got from the Kaimakam. So, of course, there was no official permit for him to remove from the marbles.
Thank you very much.
All through the way.
So what do you make of the written account we have of July back in Athens, when Hunt is speaking to Elgin, and we have his draft letter applying for the firman with the terms that we then see in the letter that's presented to Parliament? Did none of that exist?
What Hunt presented in the Select Committee was the English translation, which he personally made. Of course, altering the sense of many words, and which English translation he sent to the select committee after he went back to Upper Ossory. So that English translation, of course, misuses and abuses words that were in the Italian translation of the unofficial letter given under the table to Elgin.
Thank you very much. No, we'll continue with Dr. Selwood.
So we're arguing about the translation of a letter that didn't exist. We know which dragoman translated it into Italian, and we have the Italian. So the point I want to make is that allegations that Elgin was a thief or taking the sculptures for his house in Scotland are unfounded. Not a single sculpture ever went to Scotland. The Acropolis Museum in Athens is among the most beautiful, the most sensitive and dramatically laid out museums in the world.
I will protect Dr. Selwood, and please continue without any questions, okay?
But the tourists in the Acropolis Museum are regularly told by guides that the gaps are where pieces of sculpture are being held hostage in London. This is plainly untrue. The Acropolis Museum displays a copy of every piece in London from the casts. The gaps are where sculpture was destroyed before Elgin, much of it in the 5th century by Christian Athenians who objected to pagan imagery on the Parthenon, which had become the Church of Our Lady of Athens, and also much from the Venetian bomb, when the Ottomans were storing munitions there, that took out the ceiling and most of the walls. So all the damage seen on the Parthenon is not remotely all down to Elgin. Speaking in 1982, the late and great Melina Mercouri said, "Our English friends have indeed looked after our marbles well." But today it is common to hear that cleaning in the 1930s in Britain damaged them. It did not. Scientific analysis has found none. No one can see any difference. Recently, original paint has even been found on many. Moreover, other countries, including Greece with the Hephaestion in 1953, used more damaging abrasive techniques. In my view, wherever you believe the sculptures should be today, Elgin should be thanked. He took casts of much of the sculpture, which have proved invaluable for the world. Second, some of the sculpture has since deteriorated. For instance, compare Cellini's horses from the East Pediment, the one in London and the two in Athens. The one in London is crisp and vivid, like it was just carved. The ones in Athens are in a different state, and you can see those in the Parthenon Museum and also on my Twitter if you have a look. Finally, the British Museum should not be the bad person in all of this either. They do not own the sculptures. The sculptures belong to a trust set up by Britain's Parliament. The museum has zero power to return the sculptures even if they wanted to. The only power that can is Britain's Parliament. So my request is that people should discuss this topic without accusing Elgin of theft or the British Museum of vandalism or ill will. There can be a completely civilized debate about where the sculptures should be without inventing historical grievances.
Thank you very much. Now we may continue with Dr. Korka.
Let's speak only of facts. What documents and what kind do we really possess today that Elgin acquired by the Ottoman officials? Episode 1, 1800. Elgin's men cannot even enter the Acropolis. The authorities in Athens demand a decree from the Sultan. Elgin officially requests a permit for his team, and this is recorded in a copy of the registry of the British Embassy titled, I quote, Liste de mémoires prescrites à la Sublime Porte. These are memos sent to the Sublime Porte from the time of the arrival of Lord Elgin in Constantinople, 9/12/1799 to 25/10/1802. Now, captioned 17/6/1800 records Elgin's petition to the Porte for the artists. The permit does not exist today, but is recorded through the letters of Elgin's collaborators as not efficient and as such useless. Episode 2, May 1801. Nothing was proceeding. There was need in Athens of a new document, definitely coming from the Sultan, for all the team's tasks Hunt proposed to Elgin. The only thing Elgin managed to manipulate is the unofficial letter by Elgin's friend, the Kaimakam, which was given to Elgin on a clearly friendly basis regarding Elgin's wishes. This process never passed through the embassy's official registry. It doesn't exist in Ottoman archives. Hunt carried the letter to Athens. Shall I finish my sentence? Hunt carried the letter to Athens along with its Italian translation.
I think that there is a little bit of misunderstanding here. Am I right in understanding that you think that the Kaimakan is just somebody who sells lemonade on a kiosk at the Topkapi Palace? The Kaimakan is actually the deputy of the Grand Vizier.
I very well know that.
The Grand Vizier was in Egypt. Therefore, the Grand Vizier, who is the chief of the army, and therefore also entitled to decide the fate of everything that is in every military fortress everywhere, including the Acropolis.
Oh, I'm
and therefore,
very well
he had
aware.
every title to deputize for his master and therefore enable Elgin, who was acting in a private capacity, to get the permission he was requesting.
Well, I won't speak about Elgin using his position for a personal purpose. I will go into the issue of the Kaimakam. The Kaimakam may be a leading figure. He can also be a friend of Elgin, receive presents, and exchange various, let's say, letters and nice things among themselves. So if you give an unofficial letter to someone under the table, even though you may be the Kaimakam, it's unofficial because it hasn't gone through the registries and it hasn't gone through the Ottoman archives either. And let me continue my next point, which proves something. Now, in the official catalogue of 7/7/1801, which exists, mentioning all the Ottoman decrees Hunt carried on his diplomatic mission to Athens, there is no mention of the letter for Elgin's workers. Yet, Elgin called the aforementioned unofficial letter a firman. Episode 3. 1802, Elgin visits Athens. The terrified local voivode and Distar ask for documents from Constantinople for cover-up. We know this even by the letters of Elgin's wife, Mary Nisbet herself. 28/10/1802, Luzieri hands over the support letters Elgin acquired from the Grand Vizier for the Athenian authorities. Their content exists.
Are you therefore saying that the Grand Vizier, who was the boss of the Kaimakan, actually endorsed and authorized whatever his deputy had already done?
Yes, because that was official. And let me continue, please. The context exists due to the Italian translation of one of the letters, which was to the voivode, and clarifies what the artists were thought to be doing. I quote, "And this ambassador, after his departure, left them," meaning the artists, "to produce some drawings," unquote. Episode 4, February 18, March 20, 1810. Text found in the Ottoman archives during recent years. Elgin, after he left office, was not allowed to ship the marbles to England. Ottomans and the following British ambassadors were totally against it. However, in 1810, it did happen after much contention. We found in the Ottoman archives the following text, which does not mention anything about the Acropolis. May I quote? Quote, copy of an order by His Excellency the District Governor to the Voivode of Athens. Elgin, when he was in Athens, he loaded some crates with some broken marbles with images and some pottery for transport. Now, Acropolis.
Dr. Korka, we're out of time, so if you please to...
I shall finish. Elgin finally managed to get the remaining crates of marbles. I hope that my answers are not included in this. Elgin finally managed to get the remaining crates of marbles away from Athens in 1810 after a huge bribe, according to Elgin's instructions, by the then British ambassador Adair for 1,480 piastres, along with a generous present to the Kaimakam, another £100 to other officials, recorded by authors Smith and St. Clair. Episode 5, 28/7/1811, Elgin to Adair. He refers to, oh, can I project?
The pictures that you sent
Yes.
us? Okay, we will display them again, please.
Okay. So, Elgin to Adair, he refers to a previous letter Adair had sent him, according to which, quote, the port absolutely denied your having any property in those marbles, unquote. Elgin pleads Adair to send him a new letter through which the wording's meaning should purposely be twisted and changed. Adair complies in a new letter before that, there, to Elgin, which clearly shows his difficulty as he scribbles, erases with his pen, and rewrites, quote, those persons who sold them to you had no right so dispose of them, unquote. This picked upon new letter Elgin used as his legal title when he tried to sell the marbles to Prime Minister Spencer Perceval through a request in 31/7/1811.
Thank you very much.
Now, has there been an approval for what Elgin did through all that? I don't think so.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Trabucco.
The year is 1907, and Iron Dragoumis was lamenting that what he called the Philhellenism of the foreigners and the archaeomania of the literati had cost the Greek people under a heavy slavery. And what's this slavery? He says, they told us that we are all little Pericles, little Themistocles, little Socrates, little Aristoteles, and little Sophocles. They put on us a costume with helmets, with lances, sandals, chitons, and armors, all made of paper and wood, gilded with golden foil glued on. End of quote. The government was taking the people for fools, he said. Where does this ideological slavery come from? From the motherland of idealism itself, Germany. German was the first king of Greece. German was the greater part of his entourage. The general author of antiquities was the German Ludwig Ross. And King Otto's chief architect was the German Leo von Klenze. And what did those people believe? They believed that their mission was to mold the new state in the image of an idealized ancient Greek nation, a new Hellenic kingdom. Everything was to be neoclassical, from the names of the babies to the names of the places, from the shape of the new buildings, such as this one, and to the artificial katarevusa. The first Greek heritage law, written by Bavarians in 1834, established that all antiquities within Greece were national property, as they were works of the ancestors of the Greek people. And yet, how many works of Greek medieval history have been destroyed by those same Germans, sacrificed to the German dream of the pure classical Greece of the myth? How many Greek items have been exported, considered unimportant, because they don't align with the neoclassical vision of these Germans? But that was their dream.
Yes, please. Address your question.
Dr. Trabucco, in one of the very helpful links that you have sent to us about things that you have written about the Parthenon marbles, you have said that Pericles looks like Donald Trump. Is this what you believe?
I do. If you imagine Donald Trump taking the treasure of the NATO alliance, bringing it over to Washington, and redoing with it the White House in gold, then yes, he would behave exactly like Pericles did whenever he decided the treasure of the Athenian League, which started as a league amongst equals, equal partners, was to be brought to Athens, and then he decided that he could use the funds of the Athenian League to actually make buildings on the Acropolis, which have a very specific local Athenian character to celebrate local Athenian greatness. That's not the kind of use that communal funds of a military alliance should be put to. So that was their dream, not the Greeks. And the soul of Greece has always been looking at Constantinople. The faith of Greece has always been the Orthodox one. The language of Greece has always been the Timotiki. When we look at ancient buildings, we don't, we don't choose which story we want to tell. Respectfully, we peel every phase like an onion and let the stones tell their story. No one layer is more important than another one, and what is missing tells us just as much as what is present. How much I would have loved to see the Parthenon that was destroyed by Leo von Klenze. How much I would have loved to see the halls of the 1687 explosion. How much I would have loved to see the mosque that was in the middle of the Parthenon, and it now is no more because somebody has decided that some history is better than some other history. And that's another fantasy, like the reunification of a sculpture. Even if you put together all that we have left, you don't get a reunification, because you are putting 1/3 of the decoration alongside another third of the decoration, missing another third because it's been lost to history, but you are not putting it onto the monument, which was exactly the reunification that was recommended in 1983 by UNESCO.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Stamatoudi.
We heard that the marbles were well preserved and looked after at the British Museum, and of course that means that this is the best place for them to be for the sake of humanity. Retentionists also argue that the return would open the floodgates and empty the museums of the world. The sculptures in the Acropolis Museum are in better condition compared to the ones in the British Museum, despite the fact that Elgin chose to take the most well-preserved ones. When the marbles reached the British Museum, they had already suffered severe damage. They broke as they were brought down from the temple. They were removed brutally and in a barbarous way, sunk outside the island of Kythera, and lay on the beach next to the sea and under the sun for a long time before being removed to England. There, they were stored in carbon shades in the worst possible conditions. In 1938, under Juvin's initiative, the items were scrubbed to whiten, destroying their natural patina. Part of their surface was removed. According to St. Clair, this was the greatest damage in the history of the British Museum. Of course, this was before nearly 2,000 artifacts were stolen from the British Museum by the very people responsible for carrying them.
Kyria Stamatoudi, are you aware of the researches of Emma Payne and the beautiful book that she has published disproving completely this history of the damages. Are you aware of the studies already mentioned by Dr. Selwood that have found traces under the patina which allegedly would have been scrubbed, and instead is still there with the paint traces that we have now found?
Thank you very much for your question. Let me answer by asking you, are you aware that there was a special team going over from Greece? Dr. Korka was part of this team, to the British Museum to examine their marbles. And what was the outcome of this examination? That part of the surface was removed. Are you aware that there were sanctions by the director of the British Museum against the people, in fact, that were scrubbing the marbles in order to whiten them? So, the Juvin Gallery was also used for events where food and drinks were served. The roof often leaked, and the gallery had to close occasionally for repairs. I find it difficult to see this as good care. Do more people visit the British Museum than the Acropolis Museum? Perhaps, but only 5% of them visit the Juvin Gallery where the marbles are housed. So the argument that more people visit them in London rather than in Athens is not true. Will the World's Museum empty if the marbles are returned? Such an exaggeration. How many requests do you think the British Museum had in the last 10 years? 10. 1 per year. And I do not even know whether all of them are valid. How many requests has Greece filed with British Museum for objects falling outside the scope of the 1970 UNESCO Convention? None. And that's because we consider the Parthenon marbles unique.
So I just wanted to ask, are you aware that the British Museum has no power to dispose of the marbles? It's British Parliament that keeps the marbles in Britain.
That's not true, because the British Museum has already returned objects by long-term loans. It has returned objects to Ghana, it has returned the Kwake mask in the Larard Bay in Canada, it has returned the chess medieval parts, so it has in fact, affected many returns. Apart of that, are you aware that there was a special legal opinion sent to the British Museum for the Ethiopian tablets, where according to this opinion, this lawyer that drafted it said that there's no need for a change in the law because the British Museum Act 1963 provides that objects that are unfit to stay in the collection can be returned. And this term unfit can also include moral cases. We do not believe that the world's museums should empty. We have museums ourselves which we cherish. However, our museums take pride in not having any stolen, illegally obtained or unethical objects. We believe that museums should set the example. Is the British Museum a universal museum that wants to keep the marbles for the sake of humanity so that visitors can compare different cultures? I quote Karan Singh, a member of India's upper house of parliament. The museum's universalism is an ideological position that has its own history and its own politics, and the Universal Museum is fighting to protect its own heritage, not the world's. This is the nationalism we experience, not the Greek people's rightful request for the return of their most emblematic antiquity that has been looted.
Thank you very much. Now we're entering the third and the final stage of the debate, and we will give the floor to Dr. Trabucco.
Thank you. By now, we should have seen that the real history of the marbles is more complicated than what you can read on government-issued school books, or a cheap coverage story from a tabloid. There are many points on which we disagree, and we should actually be going back to the basics, and agree on the details. Because what I've heard tonight are letters that are quoted in a couple of lines and they are omitted in 2 lines after those. UNESCO being called in, but then not being listened to when it comes to the opposite recommendation. Why here Lord Byron being mentioned? And yet nobody is talking about the fact that Lord Byron is one of the best cast iron witnesses that says in Child Iron in one of the notes that 2 painters were succeeding in plundering the Parthenon, succeeding in turn to the tenor of each Fairman. So, Byron says that there is a Fairman. Interesting. And Dodwell says that the people were clamoring, both Greeks and Turks alike, for the permission the Sultan had granted. Oh, interesting. We have yet another traveler, as mentioned by Dr. Korka, that is saying that there was a Fairman, there was a permission, and there was also another traveler, Obaus, that basically said this was the, I'll finish the sentence, this was the permission under which Hunt was empowered to take anything he liked from the Acropolis.
Please, Dr. Korka.
What Gell and other travelers said that they saw the document in the hands of the Ottomans. So what they saw was the letter, not the firman. They don't mean the firman, they mean the letter, because that was the only thing that existed.
I thank Dr. Korka for giving us this unique insight into the mind of people that have been dead for more than 200 years. The problem is that we will never know what they meant with whatever they said. What we definitely know is that every Westerner traveler would call a Fairman even a bus ticket if it was issued by the competent Ottoman authority. They would call a Fairman anything. Byron himself says, we should not have, we should scorn the death Fairman, talking about the death penalty. Everything that was coming from the Ottoman authority was a Fairman. But this doesn't mean that the Ottomans would mean it that particular way. Edem Eldem, professor in Turkey, says, and quite competent on this particular matter of Fairmans, says quite clearly that this was most probably a bujuruldi, as Dr. Korka herself called it just a few minutes ago. So we know that it was an official order. That's what bujuruldi means.
Okay. Last question for this speech.
Yes, I have to ask you whether you're aware of the guidebook which Brian Cook, the very famous keeper of Greek and Roman antiquities, published, where he says that that document was very controversial and probably did not give Elgin any permission.
Thank you very much.
I am quite aware, and actually I would prefer that we each other acknowledge the fact that we are both quite aware of the details of this controversy. And I would say, yes, Brian Cook said so, but I'm a Catholic. I know about papal infallibility, but not about Brian Cook's infallibility. So I don't take this particular into much account, because on the other side, William St. Clair believed in the Fairman, David Rudenstine believed in the Fairman, Byron believed in the Fairman, so we are quite sure about the Fairman. And I know that what the Fairman says, because the Fairman and the translation that we have happens to be written in Italian, which is my native language. So I can vouch about the content of the Fairman without the need of a particular English or Greek translation. So I think that in order to make a little bit of a step forward in this particular controversy, we should go back to the sources, which was what one great historian, Alain Bresson, would suggest much time ago. So, and also, we should do this in the spirit of friendship, because at the end of the day, we are both on the same side, because we are both treasuring the legacy of ancient Greek civilization. We are culturally cousins. 1/3 of the English language has a Greek origin, for example, and much more when it comes to scientific terminology. So And in this spirit of this new Hellenic koine, I would quote Isocrates, the man who united the Greeks to fight against Persia, the man who inspired Yosippos Moisiodax to kickstart a new political classicism, and the man who said in his Panegyricos that the name of Greek is not a name that is attributed to people that share a common blood. It's the name that is given to people that share a common culture. And I challenge anyone to say that your culture and our culture is not the same. Now, we should be...
You need to conclude.
Yep, thank you. So, it's only right that we keep telling this shared story. It's only right that we continue to look after our share of the Parthenon. And because deep down, as Percy Shelley would say, we are all Greek. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
Thank you very much. Now we will continue for 2 minutes with Dr. Korka.
As in any crime scene, let us speak about motives and even emotions of the persona involved. Elgin. Elgin to Hawkesbury, 1801, for the first time exposes his plan for antiquities, which is, quote, of private gratification, not in the result exclusively so. Naturally, I have not made the Porte acquainted with his project, unquote. Elgin to Luzieri, 10/7/1801, reminds Luzieri about, quote, plans of my house. The hall is intended to be adorned with columns, every order, prompting for value of sculptured marble, unquote. Luzieri, Elgin.
Please continue, and then we will allow the question.
Luzieri, now, Elgin to Luzieri, 1801. Elgin asks Luzieri for the removal of blocks from the buildings of the Acropolis for the fireplaces he is constructing. In other letters, he even asks for the Parthenon cella pavement. 24/4/1807, Luzieri to Elgin, regarding Logothetti, a Greek posted as British consul in Athens, who dared in the beginning to openly oppose the removals. Quote, he always made difficulties. It was he, Your Excellency, lost the rest of the frieze. Luzieri, 28/10/1802, quote, to touch the figures on the fronton of the west side of the Parthenon and also take a caryatid. Afterwards, I must hide myself away from everyone, unquote. In another instance, I have even been obliged to be a little barbarous, unquote. Hunt, he specifically avows, I was seized by tremors and palpitation, unquote, when he saw the detached metope hanging in the air only by its rope. Disdar, he uttered, shedding a tear, the Greek word telos, meaning the end, when one of the metopes, as it was lowered, fell shattering to the ground. Dilettanti, architect of the British Museum, Sir Robert Smirke, to his father, Messina, 6/10/1803, regarding the Acropolis, quote, the commandant of the fortress has suffered, Lord Elgin, but though there is a law strictly enforced condemning him to death, who suffers the smallest stone to be conveyed from the propriety of the Grand Seignior, he has not been able to resist the bribes made him, unquote. Artist Robert Hayden, when seeing the marbles in London, quote, a large portion of the frieze and metopes were wrenched away from the parent building. There has been revulsion against the dismemberment. Lying in the damp, we don't deserve them, unquote. Anonymous writer from Rome, 1803, regarding the removal of the marbles in Ford Hub House. Quote, not only have the movable works been taken, but also many artworks that were considered immovable, unquote.
Dr. Korka, you should
Okay,
conclude.
the last
quote.
The Greeks learned Greek from Ioannina, said to traveler J.C. Hobhouse, quote, "You English are carrying off the works of our forefathers. Greeks will redemand them."
Thank you very much. Dr. Dominic Selwood, here.
It is often said that the Parthenon is unique. And of course it is. It has its own unique origin and history. But so does every building and every artifact. Plenty of artworks are now in multiple places. The Tuscan artist Didcot created a world-famous altarpiece in Siena in 1311. It's now in 10 locations across Europe and the USA.
Could you please tell the people how this altar was dismantled and how it ended up in being in 10 different locations?
I think I'm much more interested in the fact that you can pick artifacts from any country in any museum and show that they are split, and that is what history has done to them.
It was the Siena Cathedral itself that sold it.
Please continue.
Museums, of course, lend objects all the time. Should Britain lend Greece the sculptures and other items? Should Greece lend Britain other items? Yes. The only reason Britain cannot lend the sculptures to Greece is because Greece won't take them as a loan. Only lawyers benefit when everyone argues the law, and only politicians benefit when everyone argues nationalism. Yes, there is a legal opinion about the Ethiopian tabots, but it's one lawyer's opinion. It's not law, it hasn't changed anything, and most people don't feel it's correct. Museums tell the story of objects. The Parthenon sculptures in London have their own story as ambassadors for the Athens of Pericles. They inspire 6 million visitors a year, and I can tell you, I'm in the museum most days. It's a lot more than 5% in the Juvine Gallery.
Can the head in London, when it's separated from its body in Athens, tell a story? What, of beheadment?
They tell the story of the history of Greece, of the Ottoman Empire, and of Britain. In London, people gaze in awe at the works of Phidias, at Iktinos and Kallikrates. In the 1820s, they inspired young English and European men to join the Philhellenes, sail east, and fight for Greek independence. The sculptures have 2 centuries of history in London. The Parthenon sculptures are a wonder of the world. We all believe that. They move people to fall in love with the golden age of Athens and the classical Hellenic world. They are doing a fabulous job in London, spreading the gospel of Greek civilization. They send millions of children from all countries to the museum bookshop where they buy their first books on how Greek culture gave birth to the modern West. They educate people about Greece who would otherwise not have that opportunity. I would ask you to celebrate that role, and also to celebrate museums, all 104,000 of them. They are in peril. They are attacked by authoritarianism, regimes, and by commentators who believe their day has gone. The world is turning, increasingly broken and intolerant. We have seen it before. We know where it leads. Nowhere good. Museums celebrate our common journey in this world. They help us see the people in other people. I profoundly believe that rarely have we needed museums more. Rarely have countries needed to understand each other more and celebrate our common humanity. I believe the Parthenon sculptures in London help make the world a kinder, more understanding, and more civilized place.
And now the last speech belongs to Dr. Stamatoudi.
3 surveys conducted in Britain between 2021 and 2025 showed that the vast majority of British people are in favor of the return. Public opinion is clear. It favors return.
How many of those people surveyed knows the intricate details of this discussion? How many of those people have the level of expertise to pronounce on this matter with any competence? Would you let somebody who doesn't have a medicine degree operate on you? Why would you do that when it comes to cultural heritage?
Do you mean that for these specimens they only chose stupid people?
Of course not, because I don't believe that only Greek people have the monopoly on the knowledge of ancient Greek art. Actually, we can even say that this knowledge started way before and in Britain.
Museums today need to be relevant to societies and sensitive to public opinion. And if the British Museum is truly a universal museum, it also needs to listen to the world. In 2021, UNESCO members expressed their dissatisfaction that the issue is still pending, and they hold the UK responsible for this. Also, the General Assembly of UNESCO decided that unless the issue is resolved, it will never be removed from the UNESCO agenda.
This is the last question.
Are you aware that the Article 4 of the statutes of the Intergovernmental Committee on Return and Restitution says that you can only have on the agenda things when they are about art that has been acquired illicitly and or as a fruit of colonial occupation? And how do you sustain the permanence of this item in the agenda when the Greek government in 200 years or in the last 40 has never proven either any crime, any theft, or definitely even less, a colonial occupation?
Your question is self-explanatory. If UNESCO has put it on the agenda, that means that the acquisition was illicit.
Another infallibility.
Fortunately, for the first time, both the British government and the British Museum engage in meaningful discussions. The British Museum Act 1963, drafted 62 years ago, cannot reflect the Britain of today. Morals have evolved, human rights have expanded, the world progresses, cultural ideology cannot remain the same. An organization called Great British PAC, with the help of Dr. Mario Trabucco, tried to block negotiations by issuing a declaration signed by 34 people, including Liz Truss, the shortest-serving UK Prime Minister. They alleged that the British Museum was involved in a covert negotiation to remove the marbles from the museum. They pleaded for transparency. They also threatened legal action. Probably they're not aware that negotiations are usually confidential, because if they weren't, they would lead to failure, which is of course what they are aiming at. But since they flag transparency, I have a straightforward question for them. Who funds Great British PAC? Because no matter how hard I searched on the web, I found no public record regarding the origin of their funds. Transparency does not apply to them. Ladies and gentlemen, I conclude with the following statement. Amputation of the most emblematic monument of classical Athens does not serve the world. It serves Britain. It's not cosmopolitanism. It's pure culture barbarism, and we need to fix it.
Νομίζω τους πείσατε. I think she convinced at least the majority.
What do you have to say about the argument that the marbles have been saved by Elgin, and if it was not Elgin, they would have been destroyed during the War of Revolution and afterwards.
Is the question to the wife or to the person sitting next to her?
Dr. Korka, please.
To the Greek side.
Stand up and answer.
We know that the French were here as allies to the Ottomans before Lord Elgin. They never managed to touch the Parthenon as a monument. After Elgin, of course, no one else has dared to touch the monument either. So, in that case, no one before, no one after could have done that. It was by exceeding this letter which they had, and Elgin and Hunt themselves say that it was only done because of the strong alliance of the Ottomans to the British, and Hunt totally says that because of that reason, the Dizdar, the governor of the fort in Athens, exceeded the power of whatever. So, after that, what had happened, the Philomousos Eteria in 1812 reacted to what happened by Elgin. The Greek revolutionary forces passed a law, and this is the first country in the world that had a law that protected antiquities. It could never have happened again before.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Θα μιλήσω στα ελληνικά και η ερώτηση είναι αν λέγαμε ότι ό,τι έγινε έγινε και τώρα συμφωνούμε ότι θα βάλουμε μπροστά μια νέα συμφωνία και αυτή θα είναι με τη μορφή ενός δανείου, ας πούμε, των sculptures στο Βρετανικό Μουσείο. Και ενδεχομένως υπήρχε και ένας όρος που έλεγε ότι με τα έσοδα από τους visitors διατηρούμε καλύτερα τα συγκεκριμένα μνημεία και ίσως επιστρέφουμε και ένα ποσοστό στη διατήρηση των μνημείων που βρίσκονται στην Αθήνα. Ποια θα ήταν η απάντησή μας τότε?
Οι συζητήσεις που γίνονται αυτή τη στιγμή, όντως, είναι συζητήσεις μυστικές στο πλαίσιο των, τέλος πάντων, στο να βρεθεί μια λύση. Όμως, αυτό που έχει σημασία για την ελληνική πλευρά δεν είναι η μορφή της επιστροφής. Αυτό δεν θα πρέπει να μας απασχολεί, αλλά η επιστροφή. Θα μου επιτρέψετε να γυρίσω to switch to English so that they understand. What is important for us is that the marbles are permanently exhibited in Athens, at their place of origin. Now, the specifics of how this should be done should not be of a worry, in my own personal view. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, do we have a question from the other side?
I'm Mrs. Pistofidou from the Austrian Committee for the Reunification of the Parthenon Sculptures. I would like to say first to Dr. Trabucco and Dr. Selwood that I acknowledge your courage. It takes a certain boldness to come here to Athens, to the old parliament.
Can you please stand up also for the video? Thank you very much.
Yes. Δεν βολεύομαι. And to the Greek people, and to say to their faces that the Parthenon sculptures should never return to the place where they were created. Few would dare to do and to make such a confrontation, but courage without truth and justice, I believe it's arrogance, and I will prove that to you in a few seconds.
Your question is?
I will come to my question. Dr. Trabucco, you have made a great deal of noise, because I Googled you, about the so-called dangers of returning the Parthenon sculptures to Greece. But what many here may not know is that this July, this year, you proudly signed an open letter with the far-right pressure group Great Britain PAC. This is a political action committee, and you even told to a Greek newspaper, to Vima, that you had decided to team up with them because they were like-minded. These people are people whose record speaks for itself.
So your question, please.
Yes, I will come to that.
Fast.
Fast, okay. You want it fast. So my question to you is, when you tell us that the Parthenon sculptures must remain in London, are we supposed to hear the voice of a serious scholar or the echo of the people you chose as your like-minded allies, people who think drowning refugees, excusing slavery, and mocking rape victims are somehow part of Britain's cultural heritage? Thank you.
Okay. First of all, before you give your answer, I want to clarify that Dr. Trabucco has nothing to do with extremist ideas, okay? And we thank you very much for being here, okay? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you for the question. So I teamed up with this group because this group had the same goal that I had, that is to protect British cultural heritage. Now, I see it having been branded as far-right, and yet I'm puzzled because among the 35 signatories of the letter, we find people that are conservatives, very moderate, like Lord Bigger on one side, Liz Truss on the other side, and even socialists. So how can something that is far-right be signed up by the socialists? So the idea is that we teamed up on an idea, and this particular idea is the entire perimeter of what we agree on.
I would like to ask Mr. Selwood, or both actually of your side. But Mr. Selwood, earlier you mentioned that the British Museum is the best place that the sculpture should remain. And I think both of you said regarding the status of the museum, even though we have a pretty newest museum here and safer, we would say. What is, Mr. Selwood, your opinion regarding the 3,000 pieces that last year was sold in a black market from British Museum?
So firstly, thank you very much for the question.
Stand up for...
Thank you very much for the question. I don't, and I hope I haven't said, the best place for the Parthenon sculptures is London. What I have explained is why the sculptures are there and why I think it's actually a good thing. But do I think the sculptures could come back to Athens? Yes, I definitely do. And I mentioned that in my talk. The circumstances for that would be, there would be a loan. I don't like getting into legalities, and like my learned friend said, actually the details don't matter. I think it would be lovely to see them in Athens. But in order to do that, the British government, under the current law, would need to lend them. And a lend, for something to be lent, there needs to be acceptance by the other side that if called back, they could be returned. And that has always been the stumbling block, because the position in Greece has often been, we won't accept them as a loan because we think they were stolen in the first place, so we can't take them. And that is the main stumbling block. So if that can be got over, would I like to see them here? Absolutely, of course I would. So I would just like to make my position clear on that.
So, in my point of view, Elgin, in the context, I got kidnapped, and you want to take something from my house. So instead of asking me, you're asking the kidnapper, can I take something? And if he grants you permission, you do. But in this case, not even the kidnapper gave you permission. So I want to raise a hypothetical. If the Westingham, sorry, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, the palace, the England palace, existed 200 years ago, and we came and took the throne, which symbolizes UK, basically, would you want it now back, or would you have let us take it?
My position is that this hypothetical is entirely misplaced, because we are starting with the idea that there was a crime, that there was this kidnapping going on, that there was this occupation that in international law terms is actually very well defined. And if for you to have an occupation, you need to have two conditions. And the first condition is that the occupation should be temporary, and I cannot think that 343 years is temporary. And the other condition is that the people under occupation should not switch allegiance. Now, are we really saying that the people that are occupied by the Turks in 1801 were still pledging their allegiance to their previous legitimate government, which was the Duchy of Athens, which was conquered by the Ottomans in 1458? Obviously not.
Do you think that it is only Greeks that ask for the marbles to be reunited?
No, I don't think it's only the Greeks. I think also that it's not only the Parthenon marbles that are the object of this particular situation. For example, the Iranians would make very much like pieces of the Apadana in Persepolis. Maybe the Egyptians would very much like the obelisk that is in Place de la Concorde. Maybe the Iranians or the Iraqis would very much like the stele of Hammurabi. It's not a unique situation.
Congratulations to everyone.
Achilles Tsaltas. Dr. Dominic Selwood. Dr. Mario Trabucco della Torretta. Dr. Eleni Korka. Dr. Irini Stamatoudi. Ο κύριος Χριστόφορος Αργυρόπουλος.
Κράταγα και μία έκκληση που δεν το έχω πει. Ξέρετε, το Debate House, έτσι όπως το έχετε δει τώρα, δεν είχε καμία σχέση στην αρχή. Το πρώτο debate έγινε σε ένα δικηγορικό γραφείο κάπου στην Αθήνα, τότε που δεν μας ήξερε κανείς, τότε που απλά ήταν μια ιδέα, γιατί πολύ απλά ένας άνθρωπος πίστεψε σε μένα όταν του εξήγησα το όραμά μου. Αυτός ο άνθρωπος είναι σήμερα εδώ, δεν έχει ιδέα, θα το βραβεύσω. Και αυτός ο άνθρωπος, αυτή η εξαιρετική προσωπικότητα, είναι η κυρία Ελένα Αντωνοπούλου. Παρακαλώ να έρθει να την βραβεύσουμε. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ όλους και συνεχίζουμε δυνατά. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.